Good evening and welcome everybody to the fourth round of the Sim Racing Online World Series. You join us here at Riverside International Raceway, where we're set for multi-class racing between the Porsche 917K and a multitude of 70s sports cars, or 60s and 70s sports cars. So we're set for 60 minutes of racing around this circuit. It should be very interesting with the tight course. So as I said, it is multi-class. It will be a rolling start. 60 minutes on the road. We might have a little drop of rain as well. We might have a little drop of rain, which might spice things up a bit. So I am your host, Neil Wood. You can call me Woody. And let's go through what's the itinerary of tonight. Well, first of all, we have to say thank you to our sponsor Liberty Footwear. So Liberty Footwear, sponsoring libertyfootwear.com. Thanks to our sponsor. Enjoy stylish comfort and performance in our safety, hiking, everyday wear, custom fit boots, handcrafted in Michigan, USA. Tell them Randy Marek sent you. Now, Randy Marek is one of our drivers today, so we'll be sure to give him a shout out on track when we see him. So, libertyfootwear.com, thank you for sponsoring this broadcast, making it all possible. And if you want some custom fit boots, be sure to head over to libertyfootwear.com. So, as far as that's concerned, let's talk about what kind of cars we are going to be running tonight. We are going to be using, in Class 1, it's the Porsche 917K, a car that was produced between 1970 and 1971. Apparently it was only 12 built and assembled in Stuttgart, Zuffenhausen in West Germany. It's a two-door coupe, rear mid-engined rear-wheel drive, 4.5 to 5 litre flat 12 engine, 4 to 5 speed gearbox. It is a beast. It's only an 820 kilograms, which is quite surprising considering how large it looks. But that's Class 1. Class 2 we have on track. We have a multitude of cars in Class 2. The slower of the classes. Now they're all a mixture of 60s and 70s. So we've got an Aston Martin DB4, Steve Healy, a Ferrari Bizzarini, a Chevrolet Corvette C2, Ferrari GT and GTO, Ford Mustang 65, Jaguar E-Type, Mercedes 300 SL, Porsche 904 and the Shelby Cobra Hardtop. So it should be very interesting seeing those out on track. I cannot wait. So as far as track is concerned, we are at Riverside International Raceway. Now, Riverside International Raceway has been around since the early or late 50s rather. It was opened in 1957. Unfortunately closed in 1989. It had hosted the NASCAR Winston Cup, also the Trans Am Series and the SCCA National Championship runoffs, including one round for the Formula One circuit in 1960. It's based in California, 80 kilometers east of Los Angeles. So it has featured in quite a number of sim racing games way back, including NASCAR 4, NASCAR 2002, NASCAR Legends, and all the modern sims, R-Factor, Assetto Corsa, and what we're using tonight, R-Factor 2. So, how about we check out an onboard lap from somebody? Let's see who's out on track. They're out in practice at the moment. Let's see who we have. So just there making their way through the first few curves. of Riverside Raceway. We are relying on some auto cameras tonight, just to give me a little bit of a hand, because I'm alone in the commentary box at the moment, and that can sometimes be a little bit of a handful. So, who have we got on track? This is Lars Hagman on track in Porsche 917. Another featured driver, Kostas Kantzeris, has finished quite well up in the series, or recent series we've had. So this is the 4th of 4 in the World Series. We did finish the F1 1984 series a couple of weeks ago now, and we'll have to get you the points of those, because all the drivers will be accumulating points between the 4 series, and we'll find out the champion of the whole lot on aggregate scores. So there is a championship up for grabs in this series. It is a 6-round series. And if we have a look at the schedule, so our first round at Riverside tonight. In 2 weeks, we're going to be at Paul Ricard, the 1986 or 1988 layout, similar. And then we head to a really tight circuit at Ascari Ronda in Spain. Then off to Japan for Sportsland Sugo. That's the 2014 layout. Then Fuji Speedway. That's the 90s layout, which should provide some interesting racing with these multi-class cars. And then our last round, taking us all the way to December at Spa-Francorchamps, the 1980. I think that's 86 or 88 layout. So, let's see if we can grab a driver on board and take you around this circuit. And let's see who's starting a lap. Unfortunately, the person that I wanted to go to has just come into the pits. There we go. So, just trying to find a driver to come on board with. Okay, I found somebody, finally. So, coming through the final corner, this is Bjorn Hagman. So we're on board with a Porsche 917, coming through turn 1. Slight kink to the left, up towards what is quite a tight right-hander. Very undulating course coming through. And up towards, unfortunately, we're going to stop on board with Bjorn Hagman. Unfortunately, he's going no further. I think we're actually switching over to quali in a minute. Let's go on board with Lars Hagman, his brother. So through these twisting turns, you've got to be very precise, banging off these curbs all the way up the hill. It's going to be very tight to pass the slower cars, or the slower class cars, as we see passing a Ferrari on the right hand side all the way down the back straight, or one of the straights. Slight touch of the curb through the right hander and the left, and onto what will be one of the main passing places on the track, all the way down the back straight, as we're switching over to the qualifying, it looks like. So qualifying, it looks like we may be, we are not at night. No, we're not at night. So we're just switching over sessions. Waiting to get to quali. There we go, 15 minutes of quali. So Who have we got on our list? So we've got 14 drivers tonight. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Class 1 drivers, and we have 5 Class 2 drivers. So who is making their way out on circuit first of all? Let's make sure we have our qualifying box up so we can see the times come in. It's a flurry of cars coming out of the pits. Lars Hagman in the yellow Porsche. We will get the titles updated for next session. Bjorn Hagman had a good session out at the F1 1984 Championship last time, which is round 3 of 4. He was in the running for the championship until late on. Unfortunately, he had a few bad finishes which dropped him down the order. We'll see how well he will do. So he's in a team with his brother, Lars Hagman, called Twin Speed. They're both in the Class 1s. As we see him coming down the back straight. See the difference in speed with the slower class cars. The track is very wide down that back straight, and then this fancy banked turn. You've got to be very careful when you get on the throttle, because you don't want to run into that outside wall or run up to that outside wall. But the track is very wide. As we have event host Jean van der Geest with GEAR, the very fetching yellow livery, runs a little bit wide coming up to the top of the hill. Lars Hagman currently in second, putting a purple sector in sector 1. That's that tight right hand at the top of the hill. Bjorn Hagman is now purple sector in sector 1. Fastest of anyone, so they look like they could be topping the timesheets. Back to John van der Geest, who's actually purple. First and second sector is just about to come across the line. Let's see who puts their time in first. John van der Geest goes provisional pole position. Lars Hagman coming round the final corner. He is purple in sector 2. Bjorn Hagman is coming around final corner, just about to set his that time, possibly on pole. So pole was a 1:11.0. John van der Geest unfortunately stuck a little bit in traffic back there. So the yellow sector to start off with. So John van der Geest is actually on provisional pole at the moment, with Bjorn Hagman not far behind. Half a second or so got to find. Robin Taylor popped up to third. Lars Hagman fourth. Kostas Kanzouras popping in a time at 1 second behind the pole sitter at the moment. Coming through under the bridge. So quick coming up to this final corner. Looks like John van der Geest has it really hooked up. Now, if you haven't joined Sim Racing Online before, we do our qualifying a bit different than other leagues. You have to do an out lap, a fast lap, and an in lap. If you crash out on your qualifying lap, that is qualifying over. So around the final corner, Bjorn Hagman is now purple, first and second sector. This could be provisional pole. As he crosses the line, he does go provisional pole with a 1:10.78. So that is the time to beat. Kostas Kanzouras is now dropped up to second place. Class 2s. We haven't forgotten about Class 2s. Phil Brown is currently in first position. Lorenzo Bettini in second, with Simon Barnes. George Emery, a newcomer to Sim Racing Online, has popped up into third place. So we are concentrating on the Porsches at the moment. Let's have a look at Phil Brown back in second place in Class 2. Green and green. He's just coming through the final corner. This is one of the Aston Martin DB4s. They look very slow in comparison. And you get run over by the car. The camera gets run over by the... So stays in second position. So we're just under 10 minutes gone. As you see, Lars Hopper coming into the pits, getting a fresh set of boots, and out he will go again. 24th. It's got a little bit to find, 7/10 of a second. But Bjorn Hagman is still out there trying to improve on his provisional. But Robin Taylor has now popped in a purple sector in Sector 1. Currently in 5th. Looks like this might be a good lap. Running slightly wide over that curb. Picking up a little bit of dirt. Bjorn Hagman is not far behind, but beats his Sector 1 time with his own. So all the way down that long back straight. And take a slight curve to the left. And then into that bank turn. Really got to be careful with how much speed you take in. Robin Taylor with Bjorn Hagman not far behind. Bjorn Hagman, another purple. Could this be another personal best to stretch out his lead? Indeed he does. That is Robin Taylor has gone momentarily to provisional pole. Bjorn Hagman straight after takes provisional pole back. So the battle at the top between Bjorn Hagman and Robin Taylor. And we're not forgetting about these Class 2s back here. So Bettini has now popped up to provisional pole for the Class 2s before Brown second, George Emery third, Simon Barnes in 4th, Ben Summers, my teammate, in 5th, and Ed Jones is in 6th place. Also got to make sure that some of these Class 1 cars do set a time so that they are ahead of the Class 2s at the start, otherwise it will get a little bit messy. I know a few people like to perhaps hang back in qualifying. Bright blue. Won't miss this car. This is a bright blue Porsche 917. Nick Westy has now popped up to provisional pole. He's now at second. He's pulled out a second. Now, where did this lap time come from? 1:09.0. So Nick Westy popping up to provisional pole. He's not looking like he's going to set the timesheets alight on this lap because he's yellow in sectors 1 and 2, so maybe a cool down lap. So Class 1s, we have Nick Westy in provisional pole, Bjorn Hagman second, Robin Taylor third, Costas Kanzouris in 4th with Freddie Hell in 5th. Bjorn Hagman chasing that provisional pole position. He's got just over 6 minutes to try and improve. He's done a personal best in the first sector of a 20.9. The track is pretty full at the moment. There are spaces out on track, but a lot of these faster drivers need to be able to find some space out on track to hopefully not meet one of the slower cars at the inopportune moment. So Nick Westy again probably put in a fast time, but he's now not improving any further. But that's a hell of a time to beat with 9/10 of a second at the second place car, while Bjorn Hagman has to find some lap time. Slight pause there. I think you've got more entrants coming into the server a bit later than usual. So round the final corner and up towards starting another lap. No, he's going to come into the pits. He's had enough of those tyres. Now, as I said before, we are expecting a little sprinkle of rain during the hour's session in the race. And I do believe that there's going to be a little bit of a time acceleration as well. So we're going to start off at 1 time, and it's going to accelerate a bit faster than real time. So we may need headlights. I don't know how spray is going to affect our drivers today. It is a 100% chance of rain, but not in qualifying. It is bone dry in qualifying at the moment. There's John van der Geest. He's now popped back up to 2nd place. He's now in the 109, so he is closing on Nick Westey's provisional pole. Lars Hagman, personal best in the 1st sector, currently in 4th place, 1.2 seconds behind provisional pole. He's got some time to find. So Riverside is a very wide track. It has a number of, particularly the back straight is going to be the easiest place to get a run. But we'll have to see how the faster cars negotiate the slower Class 2 cars. John van der Geest is only yellow in the 1st sector, so this won't be a personal best. But purple in the 2nd sector. I spoke too soon. Wide line coming through the final corner. So with it, will this improve his position of 3rd? Very close to the outside wall there. Across the line. John van der Geest does improve his time, I believe, but stays 3rd place. Pichler just looks like he's coming out of the pits, maybe letting some traffic by. He's going very, very slowly. So he's pulling off the track. I wonder if he's had a problem. Or he's lost, I'm not too sure. Because that isn't quite the way place to go. John van der Geest catching traffic probably at maybe the best place. He was able to pass on exit there. Passing Austin Healy, it looked like. John van der Geest currently in 3rd. Not forgot about the Class 2s. Bettini is still in provisional pole for the Class 2s. Phil Brown is in 2nd. George Emery is still in 3rd. Ben Summers now up to 4th. Simon Barnes in 5th place. 2 drivers in Class 2s have not set a time, which is Ed Jones and Gilles De Silva. Westy is now improving. So can he push this time, this provisional pole, out of reach from the rest of the field? 0.6 of a second he has over the rest of the field. So purple and purple, so this is definitely going to be car squirming on entry to the bank turn. And he just glides the wall. Is he going to be putting the personal best? So it looks like he's stretched. He didn't stretch his provisional pole, but he's still got 6/10 in hand. Van der Geest in traffic, but it's the 917s. Looks like he's pulling over to the right to let the car through that's on a quicker lap. Lars Hagman in 3rd. It's closed up a little. Lars Hagman still in the 109s, but still needs to find about 6/10 of a second. Bjorn Hagman not far behind. I imagine there might be some communication between Bjorn Hagman and Lars Hagman. Teammates now. Brothers. Which I imagine why they haven't named their team Twin Speed. So Bjorn Hagman, green in the 1st sector, purple in the 2nd sector. Round the final corner. And up towards the line. They're getting a little bit loose. Not as loose as Nick Westy was that clattered the wall. Coming over the line up to 2nd place. Now only just under 0.2 of a second. Jacob Smythe in 5th place. Very colourful looking livery. Getting a handy draft from the car in front. Lars Hagman again coming out onto one of the long straights. That it looks like the Porsche 917 is getting a little bit of air coming over the crest there. Bjorn Hagman looks like he's on a cool down lap. Let's see if we can grab one of the Class 2s. Phil Brown currently in 2nd place in class. Taken by the Porsches. Doesn't seem to hinder him too much. Out onto what is the back straight. If we have a look at Ben Summers just coming into the pits, one of the Ferraris, a lovely sounding car. So it's quite an interesting pit exit, or pit entry. There is I imagine there's not really going to be much of a pit speed, but drivers will have to be very careful. No pit speed limiters in these cars. So it looks like we have finished our qualifying. Nick Westy looks like he will be on provisional pole for Class 1. And for Class 2, Lorenzo Bettini. So how about that? How about that? A very furious session. Very busy session. Even though the track is wide, it does mean that got to negotiate some of these cars at the right portions of the track. So if we set our grid order, we're going to have a 5-minute warm-up session, which will take us all the way to the race. So it will be a manual rolling start. We prefer to do manual rolling starts here at Sim Racing Online, so I'd imagine they will go green just outside the final corner, and it should help this multi-class race get going. So let's have a look at the grid. So first of all, our Class 1s, as I said, Nick Westy on pole, Bjorn Hagman grabs 2nd, Lars Hagman 3rd, John van der Geest in 4th. In 5th place, Jacob Smythe, Costas Kanzouris in 6th, Robin Taylor, who was up the order but dropped all the way back down to 7th, Freddie Hell in 8th, and the last of our Class 1s will be Philip Pichler. Class 2s was Lorenzo Bettini in 1st, Phil Brown in 2nd, George Emery, a newcomer, in 3rd. Gilles de Silva popping up into 4th place right at the end. Ben Summers in 5th, Simon Barnes in a similar Ferrari there in 6th, and Ed Jones in the Chevrolet C2. So it should be a very, very noisy field at the start. As I said, we're going to have to keep an eye on the action on track. The auto cameras are going to take care of the action for us. So we are at the mercy of a plugin. It should help me. Should help with the choosing of the action, because I've got so much over my screen. So much over my screen. I've got timing and maps and God knows what. So let's have a look at the track again. So if we go to the track, Riverside, 9 turns, based over in the US. As I said, it's over in California. Looks like it's out in the desert. It will be one of the only tracks that we're heading to the US for this championship, I believe. The rest are in Europe or over in Asia. So 9 turns, 4.216 kilometers or 2.62 miles. Didn't change the layout an awful lot going through the years, but ran from 1957 all the way to 1989. So you could imagine that if you were close to this circuit, you would have heard the NASCARs and Trans Ams screaming around this circuit in the 80s and the 90s. So no particular corner names to this track. It literally is just T1, T2, etc. all the way up to T9. So we're expecting some interesting action. I'm looking forward to this. Been looking forward to watching Riverside. I haven't seen particularly multi-class racing going around Riverside before, so this will be very interesting. Particularly multi-class. But the Porsche 917, maybe most famous for endurance races around Spa, Monza, Le Mans back in the early 70s. The Class 2s that we have on offer today are based around the cars that are used for the Goodwood Revival, a great mod made by SS Simon. You can see the track quite wide. The curbs are quite low, so you can cut course quite a lot. So we're currently looking at Lorenzo Bettini coming through these turns slightly wide. So let's check out what's going to be happening through the race. As I said, we're going to start out sunny. It's going to get a little bit cloudy, and then we're going to have a 100% chance of rain in the center of the race, and then after that it will clear up, and then we will finish with sunny weather. But I'd imagine that that slot in the middle, how long do you want to survive on what will be bias ply tyres for most of these guys? And how much do you want to stay? Do you want to risk it and stay out on the tyres, on the dry tyres, or will the visibility be so bad that you'll need to come in and change to a new set of boots? And then the question is, do you, once you have the on a new set of tyres for the wet weather, are you a bit restricted? Are you a bit restricted with traction late on in a race? You've got to keep those tyres alive. So it looks like we might be starting in the night time. This is very, very interesting. So drivers have got to make sure that they do have their headlights on. Everyone testing out flashing of the headlights. So we are going to go from early morning to midday. So as I said, we're going to have a manual rolling start, so ignore the starting marshal. So away our drivers go. They will go green just over the stripe for the first lap. So get away all nice and cleanly. You can see in the crowd all the flash bulbs going off. So this will give our drivers an extra challenge. It's particularly with visibility with drivers coming up behind. All you will see will be blazing headlights. So a lot of the drivers will have to keep an eye on their relatives to make sure that they are not holding up the faster cars. Now, because it's endurance racing, it's not like Formula 1 where you need to completely give way. You just normally have to stay online, and the faster driver will make his way past. So down the back straight for first time. All the drivers making sure that they've They're warming up their tyres a little. See if we can make sure that they maybe run their brakes a bit, hold their brakes a bit so they can warm up the brakes. You don't want to head up into turn 1 and have completely stank old brakes. It's not a very tight turn 1 and turn 3 complex, so as long as everyone is sensible enough, we should be fine. So coming down the back straight and into what is the final corner on the track. Coming through the final corner. Robin Taylor is close up behind. Car in front. Right out the final corner we come, and we are racing. The Porsche 917s get going. It looks like everyone is unscathed through that first corner. And coming up through these first few turns. The Class 2s are getting ready to go. I'm keeping an eye on the map to make sure no one has a particular problem. Looks like the Class 2s have got through the first part of the sector okay. So through these fast left and right turns up the hill. There is a spinner. We see a spinner in the back. That is a Class 2 driver. That is Gilles de Silva. He has swapped ends but has got going again. Jacob Smythe up to 5th place. Close under the rear wing. The car in front of John Van der Geest, it looks like. As we go on board with John Van der Geest. Putting a move on Lars Hagman, coming through that really, really fast. Changing down very early, banging off the red line. It seemed like they could be very, very careful. Gets a bit squirrely coming through that final corner, and the car behind is able to get up underneath. So Lars Hagman now looks like he's struggling on cold tyres coming through these first few turns. Now there aren't any mandatory pit stops, as I said, with this series. It's just going to be a case of managing these tyres. And a trip across the grass, and side by side this is Ed Jones trying to get inside. That's Ben Summers in the Class 2s with the Ferrari just in front. So we come back to the Porsche 917s. Looks like we're stacked up behind 3rd place of John Van der Geest, as Nick Wesley has stretched his legs to 2.5 seconds. Ed Jones and Ben Summers are having a pitched battle back here for 4th and 5th place in class. Going through the final corner, you see the sun has already come up, so we didn't stay in the dark for long. So we're just a couple of minutes gone. Maybe some clatter in the barrier in the background there. We can see a side by side, but concentrating on the battle between Costas Kanzouras currently in 6th place. Chasing Lars Hagman all the way up the hill. Freddie Howe now a little bit out on his own. But there's a huge gaggle of cars. Jacob Smythe, John Van der Geest and Bjorn Hagman in front. So all the way up the very long back straight, trying to get a run. Got to be within about 0.6 of a second to even have any hope of getting a little bit of the draft. So coming through the final corner, Costas Kanzouras takes a tighter line than Lars Hagman coming through that final corner. It looks like different lines, but both ended up even Stevens, really. So going up the hill all the way. No place to pass up here. over that hump, getting a little bit of air. John Van der Geest still shadowing the car in front. Bjorn Hagman has not got away. The leader has not really got away either. That gap of 2.5 seconds is staying quite stable. Fastest lap of the race is Nick Westy, the leader, 10.7, so not far off the qualification time. So remember I said that we are expecting rain. We have caught the Class 2 cars quite quickly. If we look back to the Class 2s, Lorenzo Pettini out in front in the, I believe that's the Austin Healey. There is a little bit of a gap back to Phil Brown. Then George Emery in third. Ben Summers in fourth. Ed Jones in the fifth. So back to the Class 1s, John Van der Geest. Oh, it's a nasty place to catch a Class 2. The left-right has spaced some of the Porsches out a little, and they've got away. So I believe that's one of the Corvettes that they're just making their way past. Looks like one of the Ferraris may. That might be Ben Summers just going a little bit wide. As we go on board down the back straight, Freddie Hill is on the hunt to try and catch Kanzuris. They're actually teammates. So you can imagine they might be working together. Looks like they might not be team orders. He had a look up the inside coming through that final corner, going very wide on the entry to the final corner, trying to get a cut back on the exit. But John Van der Geest and Bjorn Hagman are absolutely glued together. And it does look like we have a spin up, and they have got going again. In fact, we have a first retirement. It is Robin Taylor of our Class 1 cars that started in 5th place or so. Unfortunately, that is our first retirement. Unfortunately, we won't be able to find out what happened to Robin Taylor. We'll find out after the race, I imagine. But now, sun is fully up as Jules De Silva in 7th place, trying to pass Simon Barnes around the outside. Listen to that scream. Lovely engine sound. So Jules De Silva was able to get up to what is 6th place ahead of Simon Barnes. This gaggle of cars. Jacob Smythe is the meat in the sandwich between Lars Hagman. John Van der Geest has now overtaken Bjorn, so hard work has paid off. Put Bjorn under a bit of pressure, and John Van der Geest is now up to 2nd place on the road. But this gaggle of the cars way back. Lars Hagman in the pack cannot quite get past. That's his brother in front of him, so is there going to be any particular team orders, or are they going to be working together? We will have to see. So, back straight, Jacob Smythe right under the rear wing, doesn't fancy pulling out and going for a move. Up to the final corner, we have seen the wagging of the dog, so to speak. The sun coming up in the background. Soon we won't need any headlights at all. So, with 52 minutes to go, time flies when you're going fast around Riverside. It's Nick Westy in 1st, John Van der Geest in 2nd, Bjorn Hagman in 3rd, Lars Hagman in 4th, Kostas Kanzuris in 5th, Smythe down to 6th, Freddie Hill in 7th, Pichler in 8th. So we go on board with Lars Hagman chasing his brother. can hear that they're on and off the throttle through these turns. All the way down this back straight. And Hagman was able to pull out a little bit of a gap there. As far as Class 2s are concerned, Lorenzo Bettini is now 14 seconds ahead of second place George Emery, who's now moved up to second. I'm not sure what happened to Phil Brown. He must have had a mistake somewhere. So Bettini now in the lead of Class 2s, George Emery second, Phil Brown in third. So we join on board with Freddie Hell trying to pass through this very tight section coming up the hill. Trying to pass his teammate Jacob Smythe out in front. Definitely not team orders between these two. You're able to cut these corners quite significantly. These curves aren't as brutal as they were back in the 80s. Formula 1 type tracks. So they're coming across a Ferrari. And that's probably either Simon Barnes as Smythe getting really out of shape. And Freddie Hell gets through up to 6th place. Now as far as the Porsches are concerned, John Van der Geest is now the fastest car on the circuit with the best lap of a 10.1. And we see the rain is coming down. The rain is falling. A bit earlier than I predicted. Earlier than I thought it would, but it's going to take a while for the course to get significantly wet, so we'll have to see if anyone decides to pit. We'll have to keep an eye on pit lane. To see if we can spot when people are coming into the pits, if anyone put into the pits. We have Jacob Smythe in the pits. Is he the first to go for wet tyres? Is this an inspired move? It is only 5% rain at the moment. The track is not particularly wet, so we'll see whether that's going to pay off. Costa Scanzurus now up to 5th. Coming through the final corner, chasing hard. Lars Hagman spaced out a bit at the front. You can see there's a little bit of sheen on the track. A little bit of sheen. Ed Jones now up to 4th, chasing Philip Pichler in that white Aston Martin. Ed Jones did start all the way at the back. This gag of the cars trying to get past this Class 2 Corvette. There's no way past up here unless they want to go right the way around the outside. Over the crest, Kostas Kanzouras in 5th. Braking hard. Down to first gear. And then on to this big long straight. Get a good exit here. But it doesn't look like they're able to stay under the rear wing. Be able to get a good run. So Ed Jones in that lovely Corvette taking a little bit too much curb in the chase of Philip Pichler in front. So probably getting a little bit slippery for these guys out there. We're checking lap times. They are 2 seconds down on the lap times they were doing, so it's definitely treacherous out here. Ben Summers in 5th. Quite far back from the car in front, about 8 or so seconds. So I don't know if Ben Summers had a little bit of an off, which dropped him back. He was up to 4th momentarily. Jones coming through the final corner. Such a beautiful sight with the sun coming up and shining over the banked turn at Riverside International Raceway. Phil Brown is currently in 3rd place. So Class 2s are quite spaced out. Phil Brown and Ed Jones are the only ones that are close enough together. As we drop back to Gilles de Silva, Jacob Smythe is still in the pits. So I thought this was an inspired decision to perhaps change onto wet tyres. But it looks like he may have had an off, and he is dropping down the order. He's then 2 laps down. That is unfortunate. So the rain is bad enough that the wipers are now on. The track is moderately damp, let's say. Ed Jones and Philip Pichler are in close proximity. They are putting together very similar lap times. Last lap time for Ed Jones. Dropped back a little. But he's there or thereabouts. There are some spaces out on track. Spaces where the cars could drop into if they have pit stops. Whether you want to be under the rear wing of the car in front, I'm not too sure. So following Pichler up these right, left, all the way up the hill up to one of the highest parts of the circuit. And over this little jump, seems like it should be like part of a rally course. Over the hump and then down again onto what is the longest back straight on the circuit. So 45 minutes to go, just under 45 minutes to go. Nick Westy has now pulled out a 7.5 lead from John van der Geest in second, Bjorn Hagman in third, Lars Hagman in fourth, Kostas Kanzouris in fifth, Freddie Hell in 6th and Philip Pichler in 7th. In terms of Class 2, so Lorenzo Bettini is still pulling out a lead at 24 seconds. So this is a stunning performance by Bettini. He's out on his own, just putting in the lap times. The last lap time of 1:26. Fastest car in Class 2 on the circuit right now. And it looks like no one is around. You wouldn't know that he was actually racing anybody else. All out on his own. Got to keep his concentration. Or not. Don't really want to fall foul of the damp weather. So the rain is getting a little bit harder. It doesn't look too bad. Spray doesn't seem to be too bad either. So visibility should be okay. But it's taken a while for the course to get wet because of the air temperature, which has come down quite significantly. We are now at 14 degrees. With 21 degrees track temperature, so track grip is going to be very low as we see Bettini running a little bit wide coming through these fast right and left handers. Haven't seen much of Nick Westy, led from the start and is pulling away, it looks like. Now the lap times are dropped down to the 1:13s and 1:14s. So, and just see maybe a little bit of spray kicking up. It doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. He's pushing quite a lot. We definitely got a little bit of spray now, so visibility might become an issue. Thankfully, it is broad daylight. We're not going to be going through the spray in the night time. So out onto the back straight, keeping these tyres as tip-top condition as possible. I imagine that most people may stay out. Although I say that, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th place of the Class 1s are in the pits. So Freddie Hell, Bjorn Hagman, Lars Hagman and Kostas Kanzouris have decided to pit. the tail end of the Class 1s have all pit. They were very, very close together, remember. So this should maybe spice things up a little. So Philip Pichler is now up to third after the shuffle of all the pit stops. Lance Hagman has put on some new tyres, I would expect. It is quite early for a pit stop, so 20 minutes in. The first pit stops for at least the Class 1s. I haven't seen any of the Class 2s come into the pits. They seem to be okay. Surviving on the tyres that they've already got. John Vandergeest is in a very solid second place at the moment. Behind the leader, 14 seconds. So a very, very wide line from Nick Westy. Seems to be a very common line come through that final corner, but you just got to make sure you don't understeer into the wall like you do in qualifying. Is in 6th. Flash of the lights to let the class car ahead know he was there. So Ed Jones still shadowing Phil Brown in front. Headlights ablaze. It's Corvette versus Aston Martin. So comparative lap times, the Class 2s are in the 127s, 128s range. So about 15 seconds or so difference in lap time. And it will depend where you catch the slower cars. Hopefully, if you time it right, you can catch them on the straight and breeze past. Usually it does get a little bit choked up through the first few turns. So Ed Jones, battle on his hands. This is the battle of the Class 2s at the moment. Phil Brown with Ed Jones in tow. Pichler now up to third place with the shuffle to the pit stops. Last lap times are 1:18. Struggling a little bit out there. Simon Barnes coming out the final corner in his Ferrari. Simon Barnes is not too far away from in front, squeezing through. That's Nick Westy getting past George Da Silva. He's currently in 6th place. Actually, I haven't got my class. I haven't got the class position to hand. So this is where you don't want to catch the slower class cars. In that light left to right, and Lars Hagman has been able to close up significantly. That is his brother in front. Out onto the back straight, right under the rear wing. A little bit of spray now, getting a little bit busy on this back straight. Some of the drivers are pulling over to the left hand side to make sure they stay out the Porsche's way. It's quite a significant speed difference when they get up to speed on the back straight. So Lars Hagman at the back of this pack with Bjorn Hagman in front. I think that car in front as well is a lap down from the rest of them. So you see on and off the throttle coming through that final turn. A slight collision with the lapped car, I think. Looks like these cars do tend to wander because of the slippery surface. Now, I did say in the build-up that these cars are relatively light in terms of weight, only 820 kilos, but from experience of driving them, sometimes the car will go it will go where it wants to, and sometimes you just have to coax it in the right direction. So lap times for the Class 1s have now dropped to the 1:17 range, so they are really struggling out there. Lights ablaze, wipers trying to do their best. Bjorn Hagman and Lars Hagman and Kostas Kanzouras quite close together on track in the Class 1s. Dropping back. So you see a Ferrari go wide, and Lars Hagman is able to get up underneath. So Class 2s, Lorenzo Bettini still leads with George Emery up to second, Phil Brown third, Ed Jones fourth, Ben Summers in fifth, Gilles De Silva in sixth, Simon Barnes not a lap down in seventh. So Lars Hagman is shadowing his brother. Fourth and fifth place, closest battle on track for the Class 1s. They are nearly at half distance. This race has gone very, very quickly. And we've only had one retirement so far. I think that Jacob Smythe is out on track again. He is several laps down. So I don't know whether that was a call of nature or perhaps to take the phone call. But he has still out on track, but several laps down. He's behind the Class 2s. So a little bit of work to do. Ed Jones is still shadowing Phil Brown. He's a lot closer than he has been. With some Porsches coming up to spoil the party behind. Looks like he's able to close up on some of the corners. Maybe that Corvette is a lot better on the brakes than the... I believe that's an Aston Martin and Phil Brown in front. Oh, so Lars Hagman gets it all wrong coming up towards that final corner. Nudges the back of the lapped car, and I think Freddie Hill was coming through. Lars was a little bit out of shape after that accident with the Corvette. Pushed the Corvette a little bit up the road and was all out of shape, trying to get back on the course. And Freddie Hill was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, in fact, I think that was Kostas Kanzouras and Freddie Hill got through. So Lars Hagman now down to 7th place. But now the Porsches are through. Ed Jones and Phil Brown can resume battle. So going on board, look at the reflections on the track. It looks very treacherous out there. Barely on the throttle coming out of the bank turn. You don't want to step on it too much and loop it around that final bank turn, because you're heading one-way ticket to the concrete on the outside. Kostas Kanzouras now all over the back of Bjorn Hagman. He now sees his opportunity now. The lap cars have been able to squeeze some of these Porsches together. So Kostas now up to 5th place after the unfortunate incident for Lars Hagman pushing him back. So he senses blood in the water. Bjorn Hagman is putting together consistent lap times. We'll have to see whether a step on the podium is possible. So the top 3 out front in the Class 1s, they're on the same lap. Bjorn Hagman, Kanzouras and behind are all a lap down. And through this final corner, the spray is quite significant. Rain has seemed to ease a little. Side by side coming up to what was going to be the final turn. Ed Jones thought about it. But didn't think it was worth the risk. Kostas Kanzouras again gets close in the left-right complex, all the way up the hill to what is kind of like a hairpin and over the crest. He just needs to get under the rear wing at this point in the circuit and all the way down the back straight. I don't think he's quite close enough. He's going to need to be really close to the car in front or push him into a mistake. He needs to push him way himself up the order. Again, the front ends of these Porsches look like they are wandering about on the damp track. Porsches are able to take the lone line through this final corner and able to pass on the Class 2s. So Nick Westy has now got a lead of 30 seconds from John van der Geest in second, Philip Pichler in third. We are at half distance. A reminder that we are supported by Liberty Footwear, libertyfootwear.com. Enjoy stylish comfort and performance. Safety and hiking boots, everyday wear, custom fit boots, handcrafted in Michigan, USA. So thank you to Liberty Footwear for sponsoring this broadcast. Tell them that Randy Marek sent you. Unfortunately, Randy Marek isn't on track with us today. I'm sure he'll be back next round. Thank you, Liberty Footwear, for sponsoring this broadcast. Back to the action. Kostas Ganzouras still trying to chase Tuan Bjorn. This gives Freddie Hell a chance to catch up. Catching the Class 2s at really pinch. Looks like a pinch point coming up to the final corner. Don't want to get on the throttle to it. You can see the back end trying to come round. Coming out that final corner. I don't know whether he got a little bit out of shape coming through that final corner, getting on a little bit of the dirt and trying to get on the throttle as early as possible. But now Freddie Howell has joined the party. He is 1 second behind his teammate Kostas Ganzouras. Pichler has finally pitted. He's now dropped down the order. He's decided to give up those tyres at half distance. Oh, nearly. I think that was Freddie Hell catching the lap car a bit slower than he thought it was going to be. I think he's got going again. Indeed he has. Didn't lose a position, but he's lost a lot of ground to the car in front. And this will help Philip Pichler get back in the fight from behind. So no harm done, no damage. Only one DNF so far. It's good to see that all of the cars are keeping going in these treacherous conditions. So out front, Nick Westy by 39 seconds. So he's pushing the envelope a little in these wet conditions. George Emery, a newcomer to this series, in the lovely sounding Corvette C2. Simon Barnes getting passed by a very, I was going to say, infamous or famous livery of the Porsche, the Golf liveried Porsche out in front with John van der Geest coming through that first turn. It's a very straight pit exit, so cars will bleed out straight onto the racing line, so you've got to be very wary of cars that are pitting or pissing out. Simon Barnes about to be swallowed up by some Porsches behind. So Freddie Hell now down in 6th. He's now 13 seconds. After that, a little off. Ross Hagman is now back up the order. And this is George Emery has decided at half distance to come into the pits, or just under half distance, 27 minutes to go. That is Phil Brown as well in the pits. So this will push Ed Jones up to 3rd place in class. So he's finally got rid of that pesky Aston Martin that was blocking his vision. So Ed Jones can now stretch his legs. He's now being able to pass George Emery, now up to 2nd place. As Nick Westy puts a lap on. Can't quite make out who that livery is. It's going to take me a while to figure out who's in what livery, because some people are using custom paint jobs. That's a very interesting wide line. As Ben Summers gets past in turn 1. Simon Barnes taking it really easy in 6th. I think that's probably letting Ed Jones past. See Freddie Howe coming down the back straight. He's able to pass that Ferrari very easily. All the way up to the wall. Nick Westy is pushing a bit too hard in that final turn, I feel. And that Porsche behind nearly unlapped himself. So the lap times are now coming down significantly. We're down to the 115s for the Class 1s. 128s for the Class 2s. So we're back to kind of where we started. Although a varying dry line, which makes things a bit more difficult. Got to find where those dry patches are. Make sure that you don't veer off into the significantly less grippy, wetter part of the track, which will suck your car off the track into the Armco. Quite a lot of runoff at Riverside at certain points in the circuit, so you can get away with an awful lot, but obviously that final corner, which is what Nick Westy is coming up to now, that final corner, you really got to not push too much on exit. So Nick Westy in first. Van der Geest still staying there in second. 42 seconds. So the gap has significantly grown. And Pichler, after his pit stop, is now dropped down to 7th place. I'm wondering whether some of these drivers could have hung it out, because it didn't rain for an awful long time. The track has stayed particularly wet. See Jules da Silva just coming over the crest. Currently now in 5th place. Simon Barnes coming out the final corner in 6th. That lovely sounding Ferrari. Unfortunately out on his own at the moment. Doesn't really have too many people to challenge. So most of the cars are quite spaced out. Jacob Smythe now up to 8th place in class. I don't think he's, unless something drastic happens, he is six laps behind the Class 2s in front. But he will earn points for sticking out on the road. We do have 40 points for first and 36 for second and 33 for third. Points do pay all the way down to 23rd place in class. I believe it's 23rd. I think I've done my maths correctly. So if you keep it on the circuit from lap 1, you are sure to score. So it's worth keeping going. Always worth playing the long game rather than... People have kept it clean. There's not been any significant accidents that I've seen. There's been a couple of yellow flags, but nothing really too significant as we're coming down to 23 minutes to go in the race. So this final portion of the race, spray still quite significant. Make sure that they're staying on the drier parts of the track. So I think this is a Porsche trying to unlap himself from the leader. He's saying, please let me through. Freddie Howe coming up to the top of the hill. Just before the... In fact, he does unlap himself. Nick Westy does have a significant lead. He can back off a little. Jules da Silva about to be swallowed up by a Porsche. The Porsche does have significant overspeed coming up to the banking turn. And Phil Brown now down to 7th place after that pit stop. Lorenzo Bettini about to lap the entire field, lapped all the way up to 3rd place on the road. So John Van der Geest still in 2nd, holding Stern. Simon Burns coming into this final portion of Simon Barnes rather coming into this final portion of the the circuit. You can still see the sheen on the track. The track is still significantly wet. The temperature has come up quite a lot. The track temperature is now up to about 27 degrees. Air temperature is only about 15. So the nice summery California weather is drying out this track a little bit, but just not enough. It's definitely not going to be dry towards the end of the race. There might be a drying line. In fact, I can maybe see a drying line on the track at the moment. I'm keeping an eye on these lap times. We're down to the 1:14s for Class 1. So not significantly faster. A bit of drifting for Freddie Hill coming through those first few turns. Same for Philip Pitchler. Keeping a tight line. You can hear him coming on and off the throttle. Being careful not to step on the loud pedal too quickly. Got to be very, very gentle. So Ben Summers coming up the top of the hill. 4th place for Ben Summers. Keeping it going. A lap down in Class 2. And Nick Westy is going to pass this Corvette coming out of the final turn. Ben Summers is coming all the way out the back straight. It's a lovely sounding Ferrari. And you can definitely see a dry line on that back straight, significant that it is. John Van der Geest is coming up to lap Ben Summers, so Ben Summers is going to stay to the left. So Lorenzo Pettini has not been bothered by any of the cars behind. He's setting a blistering pace from the get-go. He's just unbothered and pulled away from the rest of the field. 70 seconds. That's a hell of a lead in Class 2s. It's the same in Class 1s with a significant lead. They don't really need to push too much. I'm not going to give them the commentator's curse because they usually do. It does look like Phil Brown has been DQ'd. Why has Phil Brown been DQ'd? We'll have to inquire about that after the race. Phil Brown was running in 7th place. I'm wondering whether it was a headlights infraction perhaps, or maybe track limits. I'm not entirely sure, but Phil Brown, fortunately he was up to 3rd in class and battling with Ed Jones, but now unfortunately DQ'd. We will probably get some information about that after the race. So 2 DNFs so far. Robin Taylor quite early on in Class 1 and Phil Brown quite recently in Class 2. So Simon Barnes now coming up behind. It looks like a Chevy in front. So Nick Westy out front by 33 seconds. Last lap time was a 1:14. John Van der Geest keeping it steady on the same kind of pace, but quite a ways away. So I don't. It must have been the early laps that Nick Westy put together, built that lead, and has never let it go from the flag. Started off in the early morning light, and we are now in the bright sunshine. Slightly damp. Nick Westy catching Gilles de Silva at really inopportune moment. Ben Summers is now in the pits, which has dropped him down the order. He was in 4th place, I believe. He's now down to 5th. So Ed Jones now back up to 2nd place on the road. But he's going to have to go some if he's going to beat Pettini out front. So John Van der Geest coming through these first turns, having to balance the car, drift it from one side to the other, balance the body roll. It's clear track for Nick Westy. See the gap. Freddie Howe again out on his own. So we did have some of these Porsches to get. Oh, is that one of the Ferraris coming back onto court? I think that's Ben Summers coming out of the pits. And that is Simon Barnes just by. This is 4th position for Class 2s. So on cold tyres and a wet track, I think Ben Summers came out of the pits. So Simon Barnes and Ben Summers in the Ferraris. Going back onto the back straight. So Simon Barnes probably thinking his Christmases have all come at once. And he had a free gift up to 5th place. So Ben Summers and Simon Barnes close together. Porsche comes up the inside into this final sector. So we'll space these Ferraris out a little. Ed Jones is finally pitting. Simon Barnes goes all the way up to the wall, getting the braking a little bit wrong. A little bit offline, I suppose. A Porsche coming up the inside. So Ed Jones has finally decided to pit. He's probably going to come out in 3rd place. George Emery is now back up to 2nd in Class 2. So Costas Cancer is now recovery drive. Westy catching one of the Ferraris in the slowest part of the circuit. Such a difference in speed even through these curves up here. So Bettini pulls over to the right hand side, letting one of the Class 1 cars through, unbothered by any of his adversaries rather. We'll see if we can get some of these overlays and teams sorted for next time. And I'll have to see if I can memorize some of these paint jobs because they are weird and wonderful. So Bettini out front, drifting to the exit of the corner. I believe that's the Austin Healey. Nick Westy is still pushing even though he has such a big gap out front. He doesn't need to push, so he doesn't want to damage his car. Maybe he's a loss in concentration from being out front so much. So Ben Summers now out on his own. He's now up to 4th place. Gilles de Silva is pitted. So Ben Summers has now regained his 4th place. Jacob Smythe has now unlapped himself all the way up to 13th on the road, but 8th in class. Nick Westy still out front with just over 12 minutes to go. Freddie Hell has pitted and is just about to pop out of the pit lane. Not really in fear of losing his 7th place. Jacob Smythe in 8th, flashing his lights just to let the Ferrari in front know he's there. I'm sure he does. Probably hear that Porsche a mile away. Out the pits, Gilles Silva in 6th. We'll have to see if Nick Westy can put some sponsors on his car. Just bright blue. Very imaginative. I would have hoped there would be some stickers or at least a number on the car. Let's see if we can nudge him in the right direction for next round. But we've got some weird and wonderful tracks coming up in this series. A lot of the tracks are based in the 1980s. And a lot of them are a little bit tighter than Riverside, so I'm not sure how some of the drivers are going to deal with the multi-class racing, particularly around Ascari Ronda, which is a very hilly track in Spain. But I think once these drivers head to the last round of Spa, these Porsches could really stretch their legs. But will be the 1980s layout of Spa, so the curbs will be vicious. Some other tracks on the calendar will be heading to Sportsland Sugo in Japan. Again, a very tight track, very undulating track as well. So every single round is going to provide challenges for these drivers, whether it's in lapping traffic or just negotiating some of these turns. We'll have to see what the weather's going to be like as well. So we only had a slight rain shower from about 20-25 minutes onwards. So Ed Jones is now in third place after his pit stop, 22nd behind second place. George De Silva is going to pick up sixth place, only 8 seconds behind the car in front. Nick Westy still out front. The lap times are now down into the 1:13 range. Times are picking up. That dry line is getting wider and wider. The spray has disappeared. It's time to push. So you can see that some of the cars are not kicking up as much spray as they have been. So you can still see offline it is particularly damp, but on the racing line it is significantly dry. This looks like this might be the leader trying to pass Gilles De Silva in sixth. Nick Westy pops over these curbs and comes up the hill towards what looks like a little bit of a hairpin. In the final turn comes John van der Geest, second place. Got up to second place quite early on in the race and hasn't really looked back. The rest of the field were fighting amongst themselves, and John van der Geest and Nick Westy were able to pull away. And I won't jinx it with just under 10 minutes to go. So you see offline, Ben Summers just pulling off onto the left-hand side of the course. It is still wet over on that side, so pulling off to let other cars through is still quite precarious. It's lucky that this track is quite wide. So Gilles De Silva now up to fifth place, as Simon Barnes has now pitted and now dropped down to sixth place. So Simon Barnes is quite high up the order. He's pitting quite late. So whether this is fuel strategy gone a little bit awry, but Ben Summers in quite a solid fourth place. Doesn't look like he'll be too bothered about the car behind or the car in front, in fact. Ed Jones, one step on the podium so far. So this will be a good first round, picking up these vital points for what is the World Championship. So it's not only this series that drivers are fighting for. So they've got 6 rounds of this championship. But most of these drivers will have their aggregate scores totaled up. Throughout the year we've been having a series or two. It does look like someone has gone off the course. That is fifth place of Pichler, who just ran a little bit wide. Silva has come off the course as well. I'm not sure where De Silva is. He looks like he's out off in the... He's managed to get going again. I'm not sure where De Silva went. He disappeared from the cameras, so he's still in fifth place, no harm done. So just under 7 minutes to go. Field is particularly spaced out. Again, Pichler is having trouble keeping it on the road. I can see it on the map. He's having a hell of a job. But he is keeping it out the barriers. Ben Summers, a very high line coming into the final corner, hoping for a tighter exit. Porsche right behind. I think that is Nick Westy just coming up behind one of the other Porsches who about to lap. Jacob Smythe went a few laps down quite early on, is trying to get back. That is a very wide line. Maybe trying to find a little bit of a drier track over at that pit exit, but Jones plugging away in third. Silver as well, keeping it down low on this bank turn. That's where the drier line is. So only a few wisps of dampness on the track, particularly when these drivers are keeping to the drier part of the track. That drying line is getting wider and wider. Drivers are able to push a little more. Lap time's now down to about 1:13. Still 3 seconds off the quicker lap times of the race at the start. After an hour's racing, I imagine these drivers are quite tired. And to keep the concentration up. These are older cars, need a lot of TLC on the throttle. A little bit heavier. Coming through these right left section, right left, all the way up the hill. Just a silver, reminiscent paint job of what might be like Austin Powers, I suppose, in the Aston Martin. Nick Westy coming up to lap one of the other Porsches coming up to the final corner. Smythe overtaking one of the Corvettes all the way down this back straight. The lights are still needed somewhat. The sun is setting in the background with our time acceleration. John van der Geest pulling over to the left hand side. I don't know, it's probably letting a lapped car go through. Van der Geest isn't really that. In fact, that was for position. That first and second are now right together for Class 1. We are about to have a barnstormer of a finish for Class 1. Second and third are right together. Our director has decided to focus on 5th place. I'm sure he will get back to the battle for second and third. John van der Geest and Bjorn Hagman are really close together, now putting faster lap times in of 1:12s. Westy is not really too bothered out front, letting another lap car come through. Here we go, John van der Geest with Bjorn Hagman right under his rear wing. So a battle down to the last. We are only 2 minutes 40 to go. So Bjorn Hagman has left his push right into the end. Looking at lap times, there doesn't seem to be any significant drop off. So this is on pace alone. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the battle for second and third. 0.2 apart. I think Pichler is now out on his own in 5th, but we are concerned with the battle between the second and third for Bjorn Hagman. As it looks like John van der Geest gets it all wrong coming out the final corner and clatters the barrier. It does look like Bjorn Hagman is now back up to second place. He had to fight for that one. I imagine that maybe John van der Geest got on the wet stuff and it just drew him into the barrier. But Bettini now with only 1.5 minutes to go. Got a very comfortable lead out in Class 2. Emery in second and Jones picking up the last step on the podium. So Nick Westy coming through the final corner. Across the line. There's possibly going to be 2 more laps left in this race. It is when the leader crosses the line, so we'll have to keep an eye on when the leader does in fact cross the line. We've only had 2 DNFs, which unfortunately we lost Robin Taylor quite early on in Class 1. And Phil Brown unfortunately lost to a disqualification, and we'll have to find out why that was for the next round in 2 weeks' time. So coming up to 30 seconds to go. It's been 60 minutes of furious racing here at Riverside International Raceway. Multi-class with the Porsche 917K and the GT Revival. Nick Westy again is braking all wrong coming up that final curve. Now he can lift off coming up to the line. Is he going to go for another lap? It looks like we are going to go for another lap by about 2 seconds. So the clock has run out. He didn't want to lift off the throttle. So we are on the final lap of the race. Fischler looks like he was scared of that Aston Martin in front. It came up a bit quicker than he thought. So here's the leader for Class 1 coming through. Sector 1, Sector 2. Overtaking the Corvette on the inside. Ben Summers in a very lonely 4th now that others have dropped away. So Nick Westy coming all the way down the back straight for the last time. Up into Sector 3. Now if he passes the Porsche in front, then it won't need to do another lap. But that Porsche in front will need to do another lap. So Nick Westy is power sliding through this final turn. Flashes his light, comes over the line to win the first round of the World Sports Car and GT Revival Series. And it does look like it's gonna be a little bit of time before the other drivers come across the lines. Bjorn Hagman in second. He was able to grab second. In fact, Lars Hagman, I think, has been able to grab third from John van der Gies. So what happened to John van der Gies in that final? It looks like John van der Gies 1:21 was his last lap. So unfortunate incident late on in the race has meant that John van der Gies dropped down from second to 4th place. So Lorenzo Bettini celebrating, coming over the line, a well-deserved victory. He was able to lap all of the field, so a dominant victory for Class 2 in the end. So I'm just waiting for the rest of the cars to come across the line. So, 60 minutes of racing, rounds 1 of 6. So, Riverside is over and done with. It looks like all of our drivers are in the pits and finish the race. So, let's go to our results. So, session results. Let's have a look at... First of all, let's have a look at Class 1. So Nick Westy, dominant victory in the end. Bjorn Hagman in second, but was able to grab second with his brother not far behind in third. Bit of a nightmare for John Vandergeest in those final 2 or 3 minutes, which dropped from 2nd down to 4th. Philip Bischler in the end gets 5th. Costas Canzo has dropped down the order a little bit right at the end of the race, down to 6th. Freddie Hell in 7th. Jacob Smythe a pit early on, which meant that he dropped a few laps down from the leaders and was never able to regain positions, but he still scores points. Robin Taylor unfortunately DNF'd back in 9th earlier on in the race. If we look at Class 2, Class 2 was a win from Lorenzo Bettini. Led from the start and didn't look back. George Emery first race for Sim Racing Online. It's good to have him here in 2nd place. Ed Jones in 3rd. Ben Summers in the Ferrari in 4th. Gilles de Silva in 5th. Simon Barnes in 6th. Phil Brown in 7th place. So we're going to figure out why Phil Brown got a disqualification. We'll have to find that after for next time. So we are here in 2 weeks' time for the next round of the World Sports Car and GT Revival Series, sponsored by Liberty Footwear. So we will be at Paul Ricard, the 1980s layout of Paul Ricard. High curbs, long straights. It's going to be very similar to this course at Riverside, although it's maybe a little bit flatter. But same long straights, same types of layout. But we're in France, so what's the weather going to do over in France for us there? Then 2 weeks after that, we head to Ascari Rondo. As I said, it's going to be a bit of a tighter course over in Spain. So I'm wondering how the faster cars are going to deal with the slower class cars through that course. Not any particular straights that I can remember. So a tough 60 minutes ahead of them. Tough 60 minutes ahead of our drivers. Then we head over to Asia for Sportsland Surgo in Japan, 2014 layout. And then at Fuji Speedway, the 93 layout, so just after they took out the banking. And they're differing chicanes than they have nowadays. So the 1993 layout of Fuji Speedway. And then the last round is the 1986 version of Spa-Francorchamps. So big long straights, very high curbs. It's the course with the bus stop chicane put back into it, not like today's. So it's up a couple of corners. I think Eau Rouge and Radion are a little bit tighter as well. So look forward to that. So I've been your host, Neil Wood. And you'll see us back here in 2 weeks. It won't just be me in the commentary booth next time. I'll have my commentary partner back. Rob Milliken will be back with me, hopefully in 2 weeks' time. If not, we'll be here for the 3rd round. So thank you for joining us for what is 60 minutes of action-packed racing with R Factor 2 and Sim Racing Online. Be sure to go to simracingonline.co.uk if you want to join us. It's still free to sign up. You don't have to sign up at the start of the season. You can join mid-season if you wish. But it's been interesting racing. The wet weather really spiced things up, and starting in the early light of day, and then the light changing a little, the track drying towards the end. It'd be interesting to hear from the drivers to know what kind of strategies they were thinking about, whether they decided to maybe mix it up for next round, because a very similar course at Paul Ricard. But very, very interesting to see how these drivers deal with it. So thank you for watching, everyone. See us in 2 weeks for the next round of this championship, where we will give you the points for the World Series as well, because all the teams and drivers will be scoring aggregate scores. So we'll get you those points next week, and we'll see how these drivers stack up for the next round. So thank you for watching, everyone. We will see you at Paul Ricard next week. in 2 weeks' time, rather. And bye for now.